While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord some says bulls. It should be bulls and cows. While herding the very beautiful bulls and cows, the Lord, who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Purport: as he grew to 6 and 7 years old, the Lord was given charge of looking after the cows and bulls in the grazing grounds. He was the son of a well-to-do landholder who owned hundreds and thousands of cows. And according to Vedic economics, one is considered to be a rich man by the strength of his store of grains and cows. With only these two things, cows and grains, humanity can solve its eating problems. Human society needs only sufficient grain and sufficient cows to solve its economic problems. All other things but these two are artificial necessities created by man to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in things which are not needed. Lord Krishna, as the leader of human society, personally showed by his acts that the mercantile community, or the Vaishyas, should herd cows and bulls, and thus give protection to the valuable animals. According to Smriti regulation, the cow is the mother and the bull the father of the human being. The cow is the mother because just as one sucks the breast of one's mother, human society takes cow's milk. Similarly, the bull is the father of human society because the father earns for the children, just as the bull tills the ground to produce food grains. Human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and mother. It is mentioned herein that the beautiful cows and bulls were of various checkered colors, red, black, green, yellow, ash, etc. Because of their colors and healthy, smiling features, the atmosphere was enlivening. Over and above all, the Lord used to play his celebrated flute. The sound vibrated by his flute would give his friends such transcendental pleasure that they would forget all the talks of the Brahmananda, which was so praised by the impersonalists. These cowherd boys, as will be explained by Shukadeva Goswami, were living entities who had accumulated heaps of pious acts, and thus were enjoying with the Lord in person and were hearing his transcendental flute. The Brahma Samhita 5:30 confirms the Lord playing his transcendental flute. Venam kwanantam aravinda dalaya taksham paharvatam samasitam buddhasundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya vishesha sobham govindamadi purusham tamahang bhajami. Brahmaji said, I worship Govinda, the primal Lord, who plays on his transcendental flute. His eyes are like lotus flowers. He is decorated with peacock plumes, and his bodily color resembles a fresh black cloud, although his bodily features are more beautiful than millions of cupids. These are the special features of the Lord. So text 29 again. Seva godanam lakshmya niketam sita govrisham charanyanyanugan gopan ranadvenur ariramat. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened the faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Siddharane. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj said, Matirna Krishna Parataksutova Mitobi Padyeta Griha Vratanam Adantago Bira Vishutam Tamizram Punak Punas Charvata Charvanana. So Matira means consciousness. So everyone is putting their consciousness in some place to solve our problems. Just like it's a little cold in the temple room here. So we try to solve it by putting on some warmer clothes than usual. So this is called Matirna Krishna, where we put our consciousness in the material world, generally trying to figure out how to solve our problems. Now the question is, what is our actual problems? From the spiritual point of view, our problem is Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshana. The main problem is we're going to die. Believe it or not. That we're only here for a very short period of time, and then we have to go somewhere else. And it probably is not Slovenia, or we don't know where we're going. And in the meantime, we grow old. No one is looking forward to old age. Only when you're 7 or 8 years old do you think, oh, if only I was 10 or 15, life would be better. And then after 25, you think, oh, if I was 15 again, life would have been better. And then there's disease. No one wants to become diseased. Everyone wants dis-ease. No one wants disease. Everyone wants to be at ease. And taking birth again, since we don't know where we're going, no one's looking forward to it necessarily. If we knew definitely that we're going to the heavenly planets or back to Godhead, we wouldn't mind so much. But there's no guarantee. We're not handed a slip of paper, a ticket, before we leave this body, and then the ticket says, oh, Goloka Vrindavan. Oh, no problems. You have an appointment with Yamaraj. Really? You get Yamaraj's darshan. Bring all your things because you're going to be there for a long time. We don't know where we're going, so therefore birth is a difficulty. Now, from the material point of view, we only have 2 problems according to this verse. Well, we have a few problems, but the main problem is we need something to eat. If you can get the right food, then even if it's cold, you take some chilies, you become hot even in the cold. But right now, probably, we're not looking forward to ice cream. And certainly we're not looking forward to fasting today. One of the favorite days or holidays in the year is Govardhan Puj, because it's one of the few major festivals where we don't have to fast. Matter of fact, it's encouraged to have nice milk products like rasguls and gulabjamins. So no one feels difficulty in Govardhan Puj. Because indeed, Krishna says, Anad bhavati bhutani parjana anasambhava jagnat bhavati parjano jagna karma samudbhava. That all living entities, they actually subsist on food grains. The main economic commodity that we need is not computers, it's not cars, it's not airplanes, it's not videos. The main thing we need is food. If everything else is missing, if we have food, food meaning not only just food in the sense of the food that we eat, but also water is also food. Because we can survive a month, even more, without gross food, but we can only survive a few days without water. So water is also food. Plus, air is food. We can only survive a few minutes without air. So we're also eating air. And also, relationships are also food. If you put people in solitary confinement without any relationship, then they become very disturbed. their mind becomes disturbed. So for the mind and for the intelligence, relationships are also food. Without any relationship, the intelligence becomes unoccupied. Because by nature, the main use of our intelligence is in relationships. In the material world, establishing friendly relationships so we can get what we want, and avoiding unfriendly relationships so we don't lose what we have or what we want. So this is all food. And all living entities the food begins with food grains. But of course, modern society, they don't care about food. They don't care what they eat. They don't care what they drink, practically speaking, most people. They don't care what they breathe. And they're uneducated in how to develop proper relationships. They don't see relationships as priority. They see relationships as a means to get what they want. And therefore, their relationships are less than actually satisfactory. And indeed, because people don't know what to eat, just like when Prabhupada was at Tittenhurst, John Lennon's estate in London, when John Lennon invited the devotees to go there and to help him with his gardening and his fixing up his property that he had just bought. And Prabhupada came to London, so Prabhupada went to stay there at Tittenhurst. And when he was there, Trika Maharaj was there, and he mentioned to Prabhupada, isn't it amazing that John Lennon has like 300 million pounds? So Prabhupada said, well, what is the use of these pounds? What is the use of all his money? He doesn't know how to use it. If you're a multi-millionaire or even a billionaire and you're eating some dead animal, you're drinking some rotten grapes, and you're thinking that this is enjoyment, then your money is simply sending to hell. And your happiness is in the mode of ignorance, which is really no happiness. It's just imaginary. And even if you're poverty-stricken, even if you don't have a leaf, some fruit, some flower, some water, and you offer it to Krishna, then you're actually going to be able to enjoy it. And your body will be much more healthy than if you ate some dead animal. What to speak of your consciousness, devouring your mother and your father. So, intelligence is necessary to understand how to live in such a way in the material world in order to become at least healthy, if not peaceful and happy. And eating one's father and mother is not the best way of being peaceful and happy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu challenged Chankazi, why are you eating your father and mother? And the Chankazi said, well, actually, in your scriptures, you also have some allowance for killing the animals. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, but this is not actually killing them, it's rejuvenating them. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the same analogy here, that your father tills works for you, so the bull tills the earth, and the cow gives milk and nourishes you, like your mother. And yet you're killing them and eating them. You're so ungrateful. So it's not that people get away with it. Oh, it's just a machine, I'm eating it. No, it's actually a living entity, and whether people recognize it or not, we get the mentality of a monster by eating these animals. We may say, well, there's friendly people in the material world who are not vegetarians. Well, they're not very friendly to their father and mother. And under certain circumstances, they may not be friendly to you either. Superficially, they may be friendly, but ultimately they may not be so friendly because they're uncontrolled. as Vasudeva was probably writes in the Krishna book, Kamsa, because he was a demon, you can't trust him. He may say one thing one time and completely go back on the word, because there's no standard, there's no authority that they follow except for their uncontrolled senses and mind. Therefore, in this demonic civilization, the beginning of civilization is to protect the cow and the bull. It's not like there's many alternatives. We can have a happy civilization, and we don't have to protect the cow and bull. No. Modern civilization based on technology is simply an attempt to defy the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His instructions, and has simply made things unnecessarily complicated. Because they don't want to use the bull to till the land. They don't want to have the cow produce milk and ghee and other things, not only for the health of the human society, but also for sacrifice. Therefore, they're forced to build these machines like tractors, and because of that they need factories, because of the factories and they need the raw materials, and therefore they need huge cargo ships, because they have all these cargo ships to get the oil from some faraway place. Therefore they have to drill into the earth and have ugra karma. And the result is the air becomes polluted, the water becomes polluted, people's minds become polluted, everything is polluted, and they claim they're making progress. Yes, they're making progress to hell. Previously, people had to walk to hell, but now the demons, they have jet planes that go to hell. And the most important people have a business seat on the plane. They go to hell in style. So it's not an alternative to protect the cow and bull. Unless one does that, then one will simply look at them and eat them. And then after you get done eating the cows and bulls, then you'll try and eat your children. There's not so much of a difference between your children and the cow and the bull. Maybe a little difference, but for the materialist, there's not much difference. Even there was one famous writer, Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, that during the 1800s, there was famine in England and Ireland, and so people were trying to figure out how to solve their problem of a famine. So Jonathan Swift, who was a writer, he wrote an article saying the best thing we should do is we should slaughter all the children below 1 year old and eat them. That would solve the problem, because there's plenty of them. So he was just being sarcastic, but people actually took it seriously. And now when I speak it, people actually think, oh, this is horrible, he must have been serious. Because people are serious about those things nowadays. Because their intelligence has been taken away by illusion. Maya apriti jnana. All our leaders, all these books they're writing, Amazon, all these libraries, they're just full of nonsense. They don't know, they have all these theories on economics. They don't know that their economics is going to be a failure, because economics is based on food grains, ghee. And this is based upon sacrifice. And sacrifice is born of man's prescribed duty. And there's prescribed duties for the people who are, not only for the Shudras, but also the Vaishyas and the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins. But we don't have Kshatriyas, Shudras, Brahmins. We don't have any of these things. We have mudhas. 99.9% of the people are complete fools, asses. They're less than animals. And a few people are Naradamas. Due to their pious previous activities, they've been born in a so-called civilized society, but they're less than animals too. They're utilizing whatever intelligence they've been granted in order to go to hell quicker. They're like the monkeys. The monkeys are also in the mode of ignorance, but they're actively foolish. Prabhupada said there's 4 classes of people. The Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and Shudras, or whatever you want to call them. You have the lazy intelligent, the active intelligent. You have the active foolish, and the lazy foolish. So the mudhas are lazy foolish. They can't do very much harm. They do harm, but not so much. It's unlimited. But the active foolish, the Naradamas, they create the slaughterhouses. They create the industries. They create all the ugra karma, manufacturing things for simply increasing people's so-called sense gratification and making sure that their sense is never satisfied, so they always hanker for something new. And there is a number of people who are Maya Pritaganas. They're the propagandists, they're the educators, who are misdirecting civilization. Andaya tandira pagiyamanaste pisha tantra urudami bara. They're blind, they have no vision, they don't know anything. They know less than everything. Everything they're doing is a mistake. And yet they're the leaders. But what kind of leaders? They're the biggest animals. And therefore the Swavidvara hostra karar samstuta purusha pashu niyat karma patiyo pedo jata dharma kada kaja. Let's try that again. Swavidvara hostra karar samstuta purusha pashu niyat karma patiyo pedo jata nama kada gaja. The men who are like hogs, dogs, animals, those who are like hogs, those men who are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, they glorify the bigger hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, but they never glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead who carries a club. So we're being misled by the so-called leaders of society, but they're actually discreet in us. They have merit, but they're misusing it. They may be intelligent, but they're intelligent to create ways of degrading people and themselves. Therefore, Prabhupada gives the example of the governor of West Bengal when he was a student, and he even came to Scottish Church's college, and he gave some lecture when Prabhupada was there. And when he came back to England, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers was in England, and this Wanklar, I forget his name, I don't remember his name. Anyhow, he came to Prabhupada's godbrother and asked him, could you make me a Brahmin? And Prabhupada's godbrother said, sure, I can make you a Brahmin, no problem. But you have to follow these principles. No illicit sex, no gambling, no meeting, no intoxication. And this gentleman, Prabhupada said, he said, impossible. So-called learned aristocratic man, but he can't even act like a human being. And he was one of the main leaders. So what can we expect in such a demoniac society where they think the cow and bull are just meant to be eaten, replace it with tractors, and create a horrible society full of pain? And people think they're actually making progress by not doing anything. So their body deteriorates, they can't even walk anymore. And looking at the computer screen all day long, they go blind. Listening to this music, they go deaf. Smelling all these toxic chemicals destroys their brain and their sense of smell. They think they're making progress because they're the Tevidu Swarthagatimi Vishnu. They don't know that the goal of life is to reach Vishnu, and they have to establish the culture and the economic system which is human rather than demoniac, or less than that of an animal. Even the animals, they don't eat their own children usually. They don't go hunting for pleasure. So although we may hear the glorification of honest society, actually when we hear the glorification of Krishna society, the Vedic society, we have to learn how to appreciate it and not think it's, oh, this is pie in the sky. This is just some kind of primitive way of living, that we're much more advanced, we're much more fortunate, we have the internet, we have cars and television and so many things to pass our time thinking about nonsense. And we have our hospitals. They can cut out everything. They can cut out our brain if they have to. Maybe put in a plastic one. So we may be puffed up and proud of our present society and think, oh, this is much better than this primitive society. But the primitive society is an eternal society where people are actually happy and have loving exchanges because they're not interested in creating unnecessary things and then figuring out how to exploit each other to get them. They're simply engaged in loving relationships. Therefore, even for the devotees, unless we get our priorities right, then we're simply going to waste our time with Ugra karma also. And then try to chant a few rounds in between, working hard for nothing. And wonder why it's so hard to make spiritual progress. Because we're taking one step forward in spiritual life and 3 steps back. We chant our rounds and then go out like other people just to try to exploit the material nature, get something more than we actually need. But Prabhupada came and he established all kinds of things, try to establish, like Krishna consciousness, farm communities, gurukuls, things that are actually essential. Not that they're just like afterthoughts for some quaint society where people get their hands dirty by actually even touching cows and other animals like that. Much more better to go out and work on our car, all the clean Brahminical cars we have. Spend our time watching the internet or whatever else is on there, the news, all the happy news, rather than going out there and tilling the land and growing something that's useful. No, we'd rather work and help society. Instead of yajna, doing things for yajna, we help society in a way of building a bigger and better bomb or bigger and better chemicals. More weapons. And we can see what happens when they do that. And the weapons are not only, everyone becomes the enemy to the government, especially the people in the state. Because everyone loses their consciousness, and therefore everyone becomes more and more enemical towards each other. And even the people in their own country, they see as their enemy. And therefore the weapons that were used against other countries now become used against the citizens. And we think that this is human civilization, and our leaders are our friends. They're not even friendly to each other. They're not even their own friends. So the conclusion is that we should take seriously this culture that Krishna is showing, protecting the cow and bull, tilling the land, growing our own food, developing Krishna consciousness, so that one day we can actually hear Krishna's flute, rather than getting so much involved in the mode of ignorance that we look forward to hearing, Mick Jagger screaming, "I can't get any satisfaction." It's true, no one's ever going to get satisfaction. Hear what to speak of him. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Yes.
What is the meaning behind the term lazy intelligent and how to be one?
Lazy intelligence?
First class man, what Prabhupada said. You mentioned in your class.
They don't try to do everything. They just do what they're supposed to do. Maybe they know how to prioritize what their abilities are, and they know their ability is to meditate on Krishna and whatever. So they don't get jobs, for instance.
They don't get?
They don't take jobs.
Jobs.
They don't get work. Like one, Prabhupada gives the example of one Brahmin in South India. He was a very famous Brahmin, and so one king came to offer him help, economic assistance. He said, I don't need your assistance. He said, well, you're living here, you're just living in this shack. You seem to have no food, anything. I just want to help you. He said, forget it, I don't need your help. So, well, how do you live? He said, well, my students go and beg a little rice, and over here we have a tamarind tree, and my wife picks a few leaves, we cook the rice, put a few leaves, and that's how I survive. I don't need your help. That way I can think about Krishna, I don't have to think about what I owe you. So that's called lazy intelligence.
People usually associate this word lazy with some bad.
Yeah, because they're lazy. Whatever they because they have lazy intelligence. They think, well, I have lazy intelligence. Why is that so good to have lazy intelligence? My intelligence doesn't work. But it's not intelligence to be lazy. It's intelligence so that if we have to be lazy, we can be lazy. People value the mode of passion so much because they're afraid they won't get anything for their sense gratification unless they work like a dog. So for that one little drop of happiness or that some kind of abominable food that they're eating, they'll work like a dog for it. They're afraid if I don't work like a dog, then I can't eat like a hog. If I can't eat like a hog, I can't have sex like a pigeon. And then there's nothing to defend like a tiger. So they're afraid of being lazy, because then they'll just thrown out of society. Anything else? Kwala Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.